There's bound to be, as I see it, a boomerang effect, or a necessary boomerang effect for this hockey club to succeed this winter. But I don't think it'll just be about approach and schematics. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. The Penguins are 2-1, having embarked for the West Coast in a 3-game swing through California that opens tomorrow night against the Ducks in Anaheim. Their season opener in Manhattan was riveting. It was excellent. It was everything you'd want them to be at this stage of their evolution. 2 nights later, home opener, Islanders. Not as tight, a little loose, but not so much that you felt they'd abandoned their identity or anything, and they'd prevail. 2-0, first place. Awesome stuff, right? Okay, so Saturday night comes along, the Rangers come, Penguins look exactly like they did at the Garden for the first few minutes, except for shooting the puck. One bad call, well, actually one bad non-call, and one even worse call in rapid succession turned the game around, but they turned it around too much, meaning it shouldn't have had the collapsing effect that it did on the entire proceedings. Penguins lose to the Rangers 6-1. So in order, you had tight, and loose. And with each progressive game, it got worse, as did the result. Not an accident. So what Dan Muse has to do now, for the first time, obviously as a head coach, is bring about that boomerang effect that I described, meaning pull everything back to what you would want it to be from the head coach's standpoint. This was Muse yesterday after practice in Cranberry about the simple act of bouncing back from a loss.
I think every game's going to be a little different. Again, I'm not just saying on losses, I'm also saying on wins. I think you got to approach it sometimes a little bit different, based on, just what happened during the game. But I don't think you want to stray too far either. I think it's, we want to have more of a day-to-day approach. And if we're coming off a game that we really like, our job the next day is to come into the rink and to get better. If we're coming off a game that we didn't like, our job the next day is to come to the rink and get better. And I really believe that. And I think in this league too, there's such ebbs and flows and highs and lows. You gotta, try to make sure that, you're getting back to, what's the job at hand this day, and that is to get better.
The previous night, after the loss to the Rangers, I asked Brian Rust, who was new to the lineup after missing the first couple of games to injury, of course, if the Penguins could capture or reclaim something, even just from the first period that they'd had Saturday night.
Yeah, I think we were good. We were on the forecheck. We had some ozone time. We had some really good chances. We didn't really give them much, and then I thought kind of halfway through that second period, we kind of started to open up the game a little bit. I think that hurt us. Fine.
All of that's well and good. But like I said, it's not just going to be about the approach or the schematics. I think a big chunk of this season is going to be defined by personnel usage and utilizing this unusually high number of NHL experienced players that the Penguins have in their system, including in Wilkes-Barre. In other words, and I spoke about this back during training camp, have the camp competition go on all season. Make it relentless. Don't worry if it looks like it's too much or everything is too fragile. Don't worry about it. Very few players who are in this current fold have earned otherwise. Phil Tomasino showed some pretty bad habits in that first game. He was one of the few that did. Out went Phil. In came Philip Hollander. Hollander looked like he was just kind of getting his feet wet in the home opener. I thought Hollander was outstanding in the loss to the Rangers. I thought he earned himself not just more ice time, but a more prominent role. And that's fine. That's what you want. You want that over hanging on to something that you can plainly see isn't working, or worse, doesn't want to work. In the locker room itself, independent of coaches, the players themselves, including the established players all the way up to Sid, speak glowingly of this competition environment. And they think it's something that's going to serve the team well through all 82 games. And part of the reason for that is that over the past few years, under Mike Sullivan, certain guys got super comfortable and were never, ever, Noel Acciari threatened with coming out of the lineup. Well, that can be the biggest single change from one coach to the next. That alone. I couldn't care less who'd want to see more of Acciari to determine whether or not they should trade for him. Doesn't interest me at all. Doubly so when the Penguins are sitting on $11 million in cap space. It's not like they couldn't eat a big chunk of that to move him out. What I'd like to see is more of the Tomasino technique. Wow, like Phil, we were all really into this, and you really weren't, so have a seat. I'd like to see that applied to anyone at all who's a left-handed defenseman on this roster. They're trying hard, all three of them. Parker Wotherspoon, Caleb Jones, Ryan Shea tries as hard as anybody on the rink. But none of them, and in particular Jones, are anywhere close to getting the job done. So you're carrying around two other defensemen. Now, they happen to be right-handed, and they happen to be not as strong, as is the case with almost all defensemen, on their offside. But I'd take Connor Clifton handcuffed over any of these other three guys. He's at least going to be physical. You're at least going to know he exists, except for the mistakes. I could say something similar about Matt Dumba, who I thought had a really nice camp for the Penguins. Wasn't rewarded for it, in large part because the right side became all filled up, and understandably so, behind Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang. And now Harrison Brunick. We'll have to see how Letang responds to the injury that knocked him out of the third period the other night. But yeah, Clifton, Dumba, Owen Pickering up from the minors. Move them out and move them in. And the most striking example to date so far is the one I've been saving on purpose for last, and that's Ville Koivunen, who had two just terrible games to open this season. It was the kind of start that, even though it's only 2 games and he's considered to be one of your very top prospects, that you could just see turning into something that would last 10, even 20 games. That's how off he was with everything that he was doing. And as much as everyone would hate to see him take any kind of backward step, I'm fully in favor of the move they made to send him down. Keep everything churning. Keep almost everybody on the roster uncomfortable. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Turple, who says, DK, I'm very excited to see this group play, and nothing in the first few games has changed that. Great contributions throughout the lineup. Have to ask, how was the crowd at PPG Paints Arena? Watching from Illinois, the building seemed dead, even during the pregame ceremonies. Is that accurate? No, not even remotely. And I can promise you that I'd find in the snap of a finger 35,000 people, or whatever the total was for those 2 games, to support me on this. Not to mention everybody else who was working there or in any capacity on the scene. I've shared this before, and I'm going to do so again. The local broadcasting entity, which used to be AT&T Sportsnet, but now is Sportsnet Pittsburgh, with a lot of the same people at the helm, are absolutely awful at miking up the crowd. And you can see this for yourself over the course of a longer season when a much larger network is in town. Say ESPN has a game, say TNT has a game, but especially if a Canadian network comes to town. And if that sounds to you like there might be a cost component involved, yeah, of course there is. More microphones, more specialists, the whole deal. But they'll put the microphones where they belong. They'll create the right balance, and they won't have everything going through the broadcaster's mics. Well, parentheses, almost everything. There also are mics at ice level so that you can pick up on the sounds of, passes and shots and things off the boards and glass, of course. As I'm sitting here right now talking to you from my home studio where I do the daily shots from, I'm working with a microphone that if I had some bizarre combination of Kiss, The Clash, and the Dead Kennedys all pumping at an epic volume, their most boisterous stuff. I'm talking Shout It Out Loud, London Calling, and Holiday in Cambodia all at the same time. You'd have a hard time hearing them because the microphone is one-sided, it's pointed at me, and it's designed to tune out everything else around it. All right, you probably hear them a little bit. But I hate that this comes up, and it comes up a lot on the app, and I do not disguise my displeasure with the subject because you're sitting there, and anybody who is, I understand you said you're in Illinois. I get that's not exactly around the bend. But for those people who are coming there and they get labeled as being some quiet, docile crowd or whatever, there really are only, that I can think of, 2 crowds in the NHL that are quiet. And Pittsburgh isn't one of them at all. There are some that are kind of quiet. Pittsburgh isn't any of that. Pittsburgh's got a pretty good responsive crowd. Not universally. Some of it will depend on the matchup. Some of it will depend on the time of year, quality of the team, just like everywhere else. But when you're talking about quiet buildings, you're talking about, in ascending order, number 2, Toronto, and number 1, Vancouver. And again, I'm not basing this off of TV. I'm basing it from being there and having covered a lot of games in these places. It's remarkable. And I have a feeling that the reason for it is that the best tickets get all bought up by all the rich people, kind of like what happened here. And there's nothing wrong with that. You made your money, you spend it how you want. But they're not necessarily the most boisterous people or the most drunken people or whatever it takes for you to make noise. And unlike Montreal, another city where that sort of thing would happen, the Canadiens at the Bell Center have this massive, elongated upper deck that allows them to stuff 21,700 people in their largest arena in the NHL. And those seats way up there tend to be affordable. And those people are the ones who keep that building nice and lively. Pittsburgh's more of a tweener in that regard. Appreciate the question. Appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. Taylor Haas is on the road all week covering the Penguins out in California. You can follow her coverage and everything that we do on the Penguins by downloading the DK Pittsburgh Sports app. It's free to get it into your device, Apple or Android. After that, you're not going to like it. You're going to see ads. You're going to see stuff that's preventing you from commenting, from asking the reporters questions. That's because we have a premium level. I would love for you to have the premium level, and I'm willing to offer a massive discount to make that happen. All you got to do is email me, dk@dkpittsburghsports.com. That's my email address. I'll respond to you personally. All you got to do is let me know you want the discount. Appreciate you guys. Let's do it again tomorrow.